So good afternoon. Thank you all again for joining us today for our peer connection on internet-delivered cognitive behavioral therapy, also known as ICBT. So I would like to begin by acknowledging that we live and work on the traditional territories of many Indigenous nations across Turtle Island. While we meet today on a virtual platform, we must recognize the importance of the land and our treaty agreements. We acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territories of all Inuit, Métis, and First Nations peoples. As our Spinal Cord Injury Ontario company encompasses many geographies, we ask that everyone take a few moments of their day to find out which unceded or treated territories you may live and work on. You can use the link www.native-land.ca to learn more, and Jaspreet will be putting that in the chat box. So my name is Julie. I serve as a peer support coordinator for Spinal Cord Injury Ontario in the London region. Joining me behind the scenes is my colleague Jaspreet, who is also a peer support coordinator, as well as a service navigation coordinator, and she is based in Toronto. So before we begin, there's just a few guidelines for our session. As I had mentioned, we will be recording, so if you prefer not to be seen, please ensure that your cameras are turned off. To minimize background noise, we will be muting everyone throughout the presentation. You're more than welcome to ask questions at any time. If you'd like to use the raise hand icon, or feel free to type your questions in the chat box, which we will also be monitoring throughout the presentation. So to help us explore the concept of ICBT and its benefits, we have Wallace Upper and Melanie Earle with us. Both are engaged in programs supporting individuals with spinal cord injuries, as well as a new initiative aimed at care partners. So I'll now turn it over to Wallace and Melanie to introduce themselves and share more about these important programs.
Thanks, Julie. Well, I guess I'll start. My name is Wallace Upper. Confusing. Many people might know me as Randy. Some of the things that come up when we're doing meetings and stuff come up as Randy. Randy's my given name, but I go by Wallace. I guess I go right through to the biggest credential I think I have for the work that I do working with ICBT is the fact that I have 36 years lived experience with an E6 complete spinal cord. So it's something that aids me very, very much so in the work that I do, because the ICBT courses, and we'll get into this a little bit more, are all geared towards people who have had some kind of neurologic trauma, whether it be spinal cord injury, brain injury, or the three populations that we've investigated and or delivered the program to. My educational background is I have a master's degree in social work, and I'm also a registered social worker in both Ontario and Saskatchewan, working on getting things done for me as well. Yeah, I've been working with the ICBT '20s, right when COVID hit. We decided to launch our first ICBT course, which was spinal cord injury. So when I talk today, specifically the spinal cord injury version, however, I will let have a brain injury as a result of my accident, which was a motorcycle accident. So it's anyway, I'll be generalizing in terms of talking about the spinal cord injury one, but it's a very similar program across all of the variations that we've created the year.
Hey everybody, I'm Melanie Earle. I am Wallace's better half. Working with I've been working with the Rehab Psych Lab now since about last fall, working on the Care Partner program for those who have people in their lives with a spinal cord injury, which I think is a really great addition to the complement of ICBT programs that are being offered. So I'm there as a support to that particular program. And just as a side note, right now we called it Care Partners. There's also other courses that might be called Caregiver, and there's lots of discussion about terminology and what terminology works for different people. And when Wallace and I talk and think about our relationship as husband and wife, to say that I'm his caregiver feels very one-sided. Not to say that that term is wrong for other people, because we all have our own way of expressing it. But we decided to go with care partner because he's also my care partner. So I don't have a spinal cord injury. But in relationships, they're generally not one-sided. So the care partner kind of allows for that nuance.
Give and take.
Give and take.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess what I'm going to do now, not guess, this is what I'm going to do now, is jump right into talking to you about what the courses mean and kind of where they come from. It was identified, well, I've known this for a long time, as of so many other people with disabilities, and in this case, specifically spinal cord injuries, that have seen the gap that exists in service delivery for, or service availability for individuals with disabilities. Creating something that was barrier free, or as barrier free as possible, was something that I had in mind with wanting to look at programs and implementing them in our study. And this is going to be very informal. I mean, we do have a whole presentation that's got PowerPoint and all that stuff, but I thought, seeing as the majority of the participants here today are people who would be interested potentially in taking the course, I didn't want to bore you with of statistic numbers, all that kind of stuff, and get right to what the offer. The one in terms of statistically that I would like to point out, again, I'm not going to give numbers. Depression, anxiety, and having to cope with pain are all things that are part of our mental health and influence our mental health. And when they look across Canada in terms of the incidence of depression and anxiety for people with spinal cord injury or people with any type of acquired disability, it's really high. So if you are experiencing anxiety, if you're living a life with chronic pain, you're not alone. There's a lot of people out there that are with those same issues. And I myself have been one of them. I was ever so fortunate to become familiar with cognitive behavioral therapy when I was Lindner, back when I was such a brutally angry person after my injury. I ended up with a great counselor who, unbeknownst to me, was using CBT. And it wasn't until I went to school and my first psychology course, they started talking about CBT, and I'm like, hey, that's what she used. That's how she helped me out with what I was going through. So I'm going to start there. I'm going to start with a therapy. So cognitive behavioral therapy is a practice-based form of therapy. So it does require you doing homework. It does require you having to do work between what we call check-ins in our course. But basically, they're half-hour or 15 minutes, a half-hour session. And so what we've done is, what CBT is, you think of three different bubbles. One of them's thoughts. The other bubble is, and for our purposes, is physical symptoms. And the third bubble is behaviors.
So if I can just interrupt for a second, sure. With the second bubble of physical, you could also say physical / feelings, right? So
absolutely.
it could be one or both.
Yeah,
Right?
well, and it's basically with the physical, it's how do your um how does, whether it's depression, anxiety, or pain, how does it manifest itself? Okay, so how does it present as physical symptoms? And in this case, we would include emotional reaction as one of those type of symptoms. You're absolutely right. Thank you for that up. So the idea is that all of those are connected, that all of them influence each other and have an impact on um, uh, their existence. And so basically with thinking, so thoughts, the thoughts that you have, if they are negative, unhelpful, or unhealthy thoughts, they will tend to be associated with and influence your physical symptoms, whether it be pain, spasticity in your legs, or as Melanie said, emotions. It could be with sadness, it could be with feeling and hopelessness. And then in reaction to that, you've got the behavior bubble. So within that behavior bubble, you're going to have different behaviors that, again, are directly influenced by and associated with the unhealthy thoughts, the physical symptomology and or feelings, and you're going to have behaviors which are really non-productive.
So
And such as avoidance, such as there's also overdoing, underdoing type symptom behavior, those types of things. So sorry, what were you going to say?
I have two questions. My
Sure.
first question is when you were talking about thoughts, you were talking about negative thoughts and so on and so forth. So just to clarify right up front before we go too much further, maybe you could do some clarification on the program's not about just having happy thoughts.
Oh gosh, no. And that's no, when we're looking at thoughts, I mean, I don't know about the audience here, how they feel about people saying, well, if you put on a smile, then everything will be better, right? Just think positively and everything will go away and everything will be better. You know, and it's what their lack of understanding of how complicated things were and that they weren't as simple as throwing a smiley band-aid on top of what's happened. The idea behind the thoughts is to think accurately. So it's and quite often when you examine, this is part of what I'll get to too in terms of what happens, is that by thinking positively, thinking more accurate, sorry, with thinking more accurately, that tends to lead to a more positive thought. Because what you're doing is you're looking at the thought, you're looking at you're questioning it, you're evaluating it, and when it comes right down to it, after you look at it and pick it apart, you're going to see, you know, well, that's not true. Well, if that's not true, well, then you reframe that thought into something that is more accurate. And that accurate thought tends to be more helpful.
Okay,
And positive.
because I'm envisioning those three circles in my mind, and I'm understanding you saying that they're all connected, and we can start anywhere along that line,
right.
And it's going to loop, and all three things are connected.
That's right.
But to help me out to illustrate it a little more clearly, could you use a specific example, or maybe two examples?
Okay.
So
So an example would be, well, I mentioned about pain. So when you look at pain, an unhelpful thought about pain might be, I'm always in pain and it's never going to get any better. Okay, so that's a thought. And so when you look at that thought, and within the course, we have what's called the 10 thought challenging questions. So those thought challenging questions are all designed for you to take a look at that thought and ask the question as a means of examining
to see whether or not that thought is accurate.
Is accurate. That's right. So if you've got that thought where, you know, this pain, it's always going to be there. It's never going to get any better. That's going to lead to, one, increased pain, but also feelings of hopelessness, of helplessness, sadness, feeling that you're getting trapped in this body that's never going to feel any better than. And then the behavior could be such that, well, if it's not going to get any better, why bother doing physio? So stop doing physio, stop taking, and participating in counterproductive activities, inactivity. So not doing any kind of exercising and just
pulling away.
And there could be very much you could withdraw from the people around you and isolate. Then those behaviors all further fuel the thought of, well, the pain's never going to go away because the symptoms are increased pain, and without doing your physio and without taking your meds and that stuff, it's going to increase pain. So they all, and around you go.
So you're looking at when somebody has an absolute thought, it is like this all of the time. It will never, so it's absolute and there's no room.
Yeah.
So once you start to use those questions, what can happen?
Well, there is room, and that's where you find that room by asking those questions. So one of my favorite questions in the whole list of questions is, what would you say to a friend in the event that they came to you and said the same thing to you? Which is great, because we really do not speak kindly to ourselves. Our self-talk can be quite brutal, and in many cases we talk to ourselves like we never would talk to who we care about, right? And for some reason that's okay, and it's such a common trait, for us to speak unkindly to ourselves. So if we were to take those questions and examine how unkind you're being to yourself and how inaccurate that thinking is, it may change that thought to when it's reframed to, hey, I'm in a lot of pain. However, when I take my medication, when I have a healthy sleep pattern, when I do my physio, and when I go for acupuncture or what it might be, I feel a little sense of relief. That may lead to feelings of hopefulness, of promise. That in turn will influence the behavior. People are going to go to their physio. They're going to start sleeping properly. They're going to start, if it's a diet associated, they're more likely to eat better if they're happier and see the benefit of that. So then that turns around and impacts that thought even more of, no, I'm not in pain all of the time. There are times where there's free from that. That's an example of.
But what if somebody takes a look at their thoughts and they think about that statement they've made? So whether it's about pain or something else, and they actually find that the thought that they have is true.
Well, that's likely to happen in some cases, because
or accurate. I mean, I guess that's what I mean.
Right.
It's accurate.
Life is hard, and there are things that impact us negatively, and there are things that you're going to think are or thoughts that you're going to think are negative towards certain things, and when you go and you evaluate it, you're going to find out that it's true. So within the course, we have an extra resource. It's called structured problem solving. So what you do then is you take that thought and you use structured problem solving as a means of either, one, finding a way to cope with that reality, or two, finding a way to make some changes. So that's what we would do in that case, because it's life's not all about baskets of puppies and rainbows, and it can be hard at times, and then some of the stuff.
So with regards to defining CBT, does anybody in the group need any further examples of what CBT means before we move on to talk about how the program is broken down?
There's nothing in the chat, but if anyone does have any questions, please feel free just to unmute yourself and go ahead and you can ask.
Or if you're typing something in and if we start up again, then
We can get back to it.
Julie can certainly interrupt us and we can come back to that and answer any questions you might have, or we can answer them at the end. Right?
Absolutely.
So let's talk about, can you give people an idea of, in this case, we're talking about today about 2 programs, right?
Yeah.
So it would be the SCI chronic conditions, as well as the well-being for SEI for care partners.
Yeah. Yeah. So what we've done is we've broken down the course into 5 lessons. So the I stands for internet delivery because it's all done virtually. And what we've done is broken it into 5 different 2-week lessons. So lesson number 1, we'll talk about CBT and just that general system, the model that I described. Lesson number 2, we'll get into thoughts, and it will look specifically at your thoughts, and it's, I think it's the most important lesson. It's also the most difficult lesson. It requires that you dig deep and take a look at what's going on in your thought. And it's not something that's easily done because a lot of, like, who sits around thinking about thinking, right? Not too many people. And to stop your thoughts long enough or slow them down enough to identify specific thoughts. But what often happens too is it works like a spider web, right? So you identify a thought, and then all of a sudden, ooh, there's this thought that comes from that thought. There's another thought, and it becomes very expansive and becomes this whole network of that are associated. So lesson number 2 is about thoughts. And then lesson number 3, we get into the physical symptoms. We start getting into some of the emotional stuff. And then because there's a couple skills that are included in that, such as activity planning, and we talk about some relaxations, breathing. Then we get into lesson number 4, talks about behavior, and we identify 2 different types of behavior mainly. One is avoidance, and which is pretty self-explanatory. And then there's the overdoing, underdoing pattern of behavior, where, and this, so many people with spinal cord injury fall into this category because when you're feeling good, you just want to go, 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 go. And it's a matter of proving to self and often proving to others that you are capable of anything. What ends up happening is you overdo it to the point where you're absolutely done. You're pooped for days to a week or weeks later because you just pushed so hard. So that is lesson number 4. And then lesson number 5 is all about setback planning. So, which is one of the things that I really liked about the course. It not only looks at the possibility of people having setbacks and how there's but it's kind of like when it's going to happen. So because I mean it took you your entire life to develop your way of thinking and your pattern of believing. It's going to take more than a minute for you to be able. And like I said, the more you put into it, the more you get out of it. It's all about practice. This helps you identify triggers of what might start a setback, or signs and symptoms of having a setback, and then a plan on what part of you're going to look at in the event that these.
I have 3 questions for you. So when a person is done this course, are they all done? Are they, like, I don't want to say the word fixed, but is somebody done in the process?
I really wish I had a magic wand where I could say, bing, everybody's things are all better. Life's going to be.
So what's the intent of this after the weeks are done?
Right. The intent is to, I think of it as a coping tool. So the intent is to provide you with different skills and strategies and techniques to help with your depression, to help with your anxiety.
So that's where the practice comes in. So the program is about teaching a new skill set. And kind of working through some of those things. But when you're done the course, you're not done the internal work.
No,
it's something that you continue to do because, as you said, it took a long time to get to where we are today. It takes a long time for us to try to make any change beyond that.
That's right. And with that being said, too, where was it going with this? Oh, the course is available after you're done the check-in part with me. There's also you have 3 months still with the material. The course is designed so that you can download and or print as much of it as you want, so you've got it for the future as future reference. And like these 3 months out.
And I know it's nothing that's been unveiled yet, but I know that they're working on maybe having like a tune-up course at some point
at
as
6
well.
months post or something
So
like
that's
that.
something
that's
being worked on.
Yeah.
Now I wonder if okay, so you've got 5 lessons, 2 weeks per. What if in the thought section, because sometimes it's like pulling up the carpet to see what we've stuffed underneath there, right? Sometimes it can be a lot in there. So what if somebody needs more time, either because they found that there's a lot to work through, or what if life happens, something happens, and living with a spinal cord injury can what if somebody ends up with a pressure sore, or they're going on holidays with the family or something like that, where there's an interruption. What happens in those moments?
Well, we don't want to have a course or present a course that designed to help with anxiety and depression to cause anxiety. So fully identify the fact that life happens and that there are just the everyday things that happen. But like you said, there are a lot of other potential health concerns or having an SCI that can knock you out of service for a bit. So no, totally get that. So the 2 weeks for each course is a minimum of 2 weeks for each lesson. Sorry, not course, but lesson. And if you need longer, then we'll take longer. If you need to take a break from it, then you can take a break from it and we can bring you back. When we were doing this as a study, it was, just again for statistical purposes and stuff, we had to stick as close to the timelines as possible. However, now that it's being offered as a service through SCIO, we can be a little bit more flexible on the time. So there's no worries about going if need be, the timelines.
And as you said, if somebody realizes they might get 2 or 3 weeks in and realize that, because not everybody, life throws you curves, that something comes up where it's not going to be, I just need to take a week or 2 off. I've got something going on where I need to take a 6-month break. That it doesn't disappear.
No.
Right.
No, so you can leave the course or come back to the course at the spot you left off.
And so right now, when you're talking about it being a program that's finished the study phase, that's specifically talking about spinal cord injury, chronic health issues, right? So when
what you're involved in is different.
It's different, exactly. So that who can participate? Like anybody with a spinal cord injury. It doesn't have to be somebody who's inpatient right now, right? It can be at any point.
That's right. I've worked with people that are just fresh from the hospital. Actually, I think I've had a couple of people that were still in the hospital. And then I've worked with people that have been like 20 plus years post injury.
So you're talking about working with people. So that's one of my questions is you've outlined the fact that this is an internet delivered program. So people go onto this, onto a website where they can access their lessons and all of the resource materials. And so they work through lesson 1 over the course of 2 weeks, and then they go on to lesson 2 and so on and so forth. So what is your part in this?
I am called a guide. couldn't call me a therapist or a counselor because it's across Canada. We offer it in the study phase. So we refer to me as a guide, just has to do with regulations thing. But anyway, you meet with me for it's usually 15 minutes, up to a half an hour is what we have available to be able to meet. And I'm there to support in whatever way they need support. So whether it be to at the end of every lesson, there's a worksheet. Well, so at the end of the lesson, the worksheet is for you to work on at home at your own pace, and it's not homework, so to speak, that I check up on it, and that it's not graded or anything like that, and you don't even have to share it with me if you don't want to. It's just very essential that you. But so you meet with me to
How
go
often?
over
How often?
once a week.
Okay.
So we meet once a week. And so I'm there, yeah, and I'm there for emotional support too if you need it, particularly in the thought process, as it can be really, it can open up some cans of worms, taking a look at your thoughts, because your negative thoughts tend to come from not so good.
So we talked about the fact that the creation of these programs is really good because it is looking at trying to break down barriers that are up. So the fact that it's virtual means people, and it's self-paced. It means people can access the programs when they want. It doesn't have to be, every Tuesday from 2 to 3. If it's 3 o'clock in the morning, that's the time that works for you. That's when you can do it, whenever it works for you.
That's right.
It's all, you don't have to worry about, booking Wheel-Trans or finding your way to a
eliminate
particular
so many
office
barriers
that might be
Yeah.
inaccessible. So
Yeah.
it breaks down that, and also the financial of it being a free program to access for people. So that's another one. But the barrier that does come up for some people is what's needed from a tech point of view. So I don't know if you want to speak to what people do need to have in order to be able to access the program.
Using any kind of laptop or desktop computer is ideal for the way the program's set up. Tablets can be used and work okay. We're having to make some improvements on the use of cell phones. So taking the course and doing it via your cell has proven to be challenging and doesn't really work all that great. So there are some glitches. There are some things that we're still trying to figure out and make sure work properly and make it as user friendly as possible. But it's still relatively young in terms of.
And they've also added an audio part, right? So
Yes.
if somebody needs to be supported by, rather than reading it, or like me, you'd want the reading and the audio to support that,
Yep.
and that's an option as
There's
well,
an audio
right?
function.
And if people are having tech issues, there is a tech person where they can get assistance from if they're having.
That's not me because I am not tech savvy. So
Yeah.
But
Yeah. So I think that's all the questions I had for you.
Can I just say something? And Wallace, I'm sorry if you mentioned this, but you can either do like virtual face-to-face with you as an option or on the phone. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah. We can do phone meetings as well. Yeah.
Thank you, Julie. That was my other question, and I forgot that one. Thank you. So as a side note to all of that, then I could speak to the Care Partner Program. It's actually in the study phase right now. So with the study phase, there's it means that anybody who decides that they want to participate in the program, they're going to be the people who are going to be letting us know how the program runs from your point of view. So we'd be looking for feedback on the program, and that's how we make improvements to it, so that when we roll it out afterwards, that we've worked as many of the bugs out as possible.
And if I can, that's exactly what we did with all the other ICBT programs.
Yes.
It's a pilot phase.
Yeah.
So that's what we're in with this.
Exactly. So the one for people with lived experience of a spinal cord injury, that's gone through its study phase, and so now it's rolled out.
It's deliverable.
It's
Yeah.
deliverable, exactly. And we are in the study phase or the pilot stage right now for the Care Partner program. And I think I'm super excited the fact that they have a Care Partner program. There's not a lot of resources out there to support people with disabilities, even less sometimes for people who are maybe in the background. So whether that's friends, family, who are, pardon me?
Yeah.
Siblings, who are supporting somebody with a spinal cord injury. So if we think about somebody with a, if it's in this case, if it's like a traumatic spinal cord injury, if something has happened, that, you know, like you, Wallace, you know, you think about the grieving process, you think about the life you had pre and what your life is now, and working through all of those things. Well, there's all the people who are surrounding that person who are also going through things as well. It's a big change. It is a traumatic event for them as well. And it's important to provide people with support so that they can be in a better position to support the person that they love. So again, this could be care partners who have been with somebody with a spinal cord injury for forever, you know, for 36 years, or it could be somebody who's brand new. And we think about, you know, now the shortened hospital stays, and somebody comes home from the hospital and people in their home are kind of expected to be their caregivers in a way that maybe it wasn't before. And being overwhelmed doesn't mean that you're not a good person. It doesn't mean that you don't love and don't want to support the person with the spinal cord injury. These are all things that take learning new skills. And people are not alone. They're not alone in those moments where they feel alone. They're not alone in feeling alone.
No, they're not.
And it's okay to not have all the answers. And to get support for yourself, it's kind of right along line with the safety speeches they give when you're on an airplane. In order to help somebody else, you put your oxygen mask on first, and then you can support somebody else by putting their oxygen mask on. So I think it's a really pivotal, I think it's a really great program that they started. So I don't know if anybody on the Zoom today is somebody who is a car care partner. I would encourage the people who with lived experience of spinal cord injury to share this, and certainly afterwards with the recording to share it with the people in your life who you might consider to be your care partner, and share this.
Yeah, kind of a groundbreaking study and approach to providing service and care for those who are care partners. And it's been a long time needed. So,
and it is basically, that program is set up exactly the way that Wallace described for the SCI program. So it basically runs the same. The thing that's different when it comes to a pilot program is there's going to be opportunities to provide feedback. And with that, they're able to offer some incentives as well for every bit of feedback that is, or every time you provide feedback on the program. So that's, you know, you can not only get assistance for yourself, but also help us make it to get it to the stage of being deliverable to
work out all the glitches. Make it kind of like the best product that we come up with. You know, that's
So we believe in it, and we think it's great. But I think we've left now like about 15 minutes, Julie, if people want some more examples or if they have any questions.
Nothing in the chat box. Again, if anyone does have any questions, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask. I do have a quick question. Well, I think, or Melanie, I'm sorry, I think it's very important too. Like, I think care partners do tend to get forgotten because, you know, a lot of the focus goes to the individual with the injuries and stuff. So I do think it's very important that, you know, you develop this program for care partners because they, like you said, they go through their own grief and sometimes don't want to share that because they feel bad, you know, but everybody knows that they have their own situations that they're dealing with. So it's important. So my question though was, if somebody does the care partner program and they do the weekly check-ins, who is that person that they're doing the check-ins with?
So it will be with Wallace. If I was a registered therapist, then I would love to be that person to do it. So it's also a person with lived experience. But in order to ensure people are supported appropriately, that it really needs to be somebody who is a registered therapist. So it would be Wallace for that program as well. Thank you for asking that question, Julie.
Is there anyone else that has any questions for Melanie or Wallace? Jaspreet.
Um, Maybe you guys did say this. For care partners, what is defined as a care partner? Um, I guess, or like, is that the only eligibility criteria for, like, what is that? I guess I'm thinking in my life, like, there's my parents, there's my siblings, there could be my attendant, my boyfriend, potentially my friends. And so
Good
is there
question.
a minimum requirement of care or a type of care?
It would be focused on the people in your life who are not compensated. So I would say the only people from the list that you provided, Jaspreet, would maybe be people that you're that are providing a service like attendant care workers and so forth. That it would be for, you know, boyfriends, parents, friends, siblings, anybody who might be coming into your home or live in your home who would be supporting you in some way. So there's not if somebody
It's
is
very wide.
if somebody is accessing this support, we're not going to question whether or not they need it, or do you really need this? You know, like it's you know, so that's a perfect question. Thank you so much for asking that.
Thank you.
Hi there.
Hi.
Okay. So I'm asking a question that you might have answered again. I don't have the spinal cord injury. I do, however, have a secondary progressive MS. So I am confined to a power chair. It's been many years. And I just wanted to know, does this apply to me?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. If basically, if because you'd go through SCIO, right? So you'd contact SCIO, and then they would refer you to. And so if SCIO has said, "Yep, you know what, they're basically, because all what we get from SCIO is well, I guess I can't really say that because we're working on it. Yes, my answer is yes. So you would go through SCIO, and absolutely it would.
Okay,
Because,
thank
for
you.
example, I've had people with spinal bifida, right? So they were born, it wasn't acquired. They were born with a spinal injury, but it doesn't have to be acquired. It doesn't have to be strictly.
Thank you so much for answering my question.
Oh, you're welcome.
I have a quick question about that, Wallace. When you say go through SCIO, does that mean that somebody has to be a client of SCIO?
That is all a lot of gray area right now. I think that's still being worked out in terms of how much support and what we're getting from SCIO.
We
But-
could make that a question, Julie, to maybe speak with Dr. Mehta about, and maybe in your follow-up email to the participants, that we can include the answer to that.
Okay.
And SWAT and Dr. Mehta does the screenings for it. So even if you're not going through SCIO and you're contacting us directly or contacting Swati directly, she does the screenings and will let you know whether or not when she goes through the screening. So I know the idea was initially that it would go through SCIO, but I don't. Yeah,
You don't
we
know
have- I don't
where
know
that's landed.
I don't know where that's landed.
Okay, we'll find out that information and there will be a thank you sort of email going out probably a week or so. And it will have all the proper information that you need in order to, if you'd like to register for the program and how to do that. We'll have all that information there. We'll also put Dr. Mehta's email address. If you did want to contact her sooner, I think just Bree, if you don't mind putting that her email address in the chat box if you'd like to email Dr. Mehta to ask her any questions. But again, that will be in our thank you email along with this presentation as well. There is a comment in the chat box, so lots I can contribute. As coaching is a retainable skill set, I will send a PDF about caregivers with and without marital connection. Love to connect and discuss your work. Please share my email. Is that sharing your email, sorry, with Wallace and Melanie?
Yeah, absolutely. This is Sean.
Hi, Sean.
Nice presentation. Very well done.
Thank you, Sean. I was wondering if you wouldn't mind clarifying your comment a little bit, just so that I understand you a little bit better.
Yeah, the term guide was used and is definitely usually well correlated with the coaching industry. So there's so much information out there right now that SCIO has an opportunity as well to engage the entire country, of course, again, where we can present about this exact topic, and especially with caregivers and whether they're marital or not, they tend to select their clientele, and once they're with somebody that they work with well, then they stick with that person. So it's a very unique area with caregiving, especially. It's much different than in the hospital, where a PSW is quite adequate. But absolutely a brilliant subject to bring up, that there is that connection between the caregiver and the client when the persons have selected each other as care partners, right? So,
and just to clarify, John, just to make sure we're on the same page, when we're talking about the care partner program for this ICBT program, we're talking about like friends, family, so not necessarily somebody who is being hired to come in to assist.
absolutely, that's a great point. That's a great point, because not even everybody qualifies to become a paid caregiver, but they are absolutely in the community with friends and volunteers, and even at other places, our local police and our BIA usually have volunteers as well. So there's all types of people who would be interested. Absolutely. So thanks for presenting and bringing up the subject.
You're
Absolutely.
welcome.
Absolutely.
Okay, nothing in the chat box. If there's anyone else that has questions, comments, experiences, please feel free to share.
Or even some feedback. Was the description of CBT adequate? Like, do people understand what CBT is and how the program was designed based on CBT? Is there any other information you need about that?
I wouldn't use the acronym to, I mean, without a full-fledged advertisement to go along with it. Just to highlight that acronym, or sorry, the 4 letters, and then to have it in block letter underneath to describe the cognitive behavioral part. That way people can relate to it much faster, and eventually they'll learn the other part of it, right? So that's the individual letters.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Sean. I think so often, and I think we generally try to do that, and when we're doing presentations in person, we use a whiteboard and we'll just jot a couple of things down. And that's certainly one of them, is to not just use acronyms without having the whole thing written out. So thank you for catching that.
Your description was perfect. It was perfect. As you were speaking about it, I recognized, but I do understand that that was only because I had prior, experience with it. So I know, the gentleman said you could use the abbreviation, but I think for somebody that is completely new to this, that was a very good explanation.
Oh,
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
So, and I got Swati.Matilda is the email in London. Is that your guys' email?
That is Swati's email. She is the individual. She's our boss. Yeah. So
Right.
she would be doing, she's someone who you contact she's like the first person that you would contact in the process of registering and signing up for the course.
For either program.
Because she'll
I'd be
do
more
these
interested
screening.
in volunteering and helping out, right?
Oh, she'd be the person to contact. Yeah.
All right.
She's the principal investigator of the studies.
Cool.
And just as a side note, I'm going to type this in. If you do want to, we do also have volunteer. So we also have a website called T6 Talk, which was developed originally just as a volunteer or volunteerism as a resource for people with spinal cord injuries, but it's since grown to be disability in general, or broadly disability. So there are some ways to connect with community through that as well. So just as a side note to that. So it's our non-paid work.
Thanks for sharing that, Melanie. Sorry.
That's all right.
It's my name.
As long as you don't call her Merlykins. Oops.
Okay, I don't see any other questions in the chat. I want to thank you all for coming. Thank you so much, Melanie and Wallace, for
Oh, absolutely.
chatting with us,
Pleasure.
telling us about these programs. I think they're both very important and both can be extremely helpful. So again, for anyone that wants to learn more, we will send you out the thank you email that will have all the information that you need on how to get registered, and all the appropriate information, again, along with this video recording. Yeah, so again, thank you. I appreciate you guys for coming on. Thank you, Jaspreet, for all your help. And to look into our next peer connections, just check out our website at sciontario.org, and go down to the events page, and you'll see all the upcoming events that are going on in your areas. So thank you, everyone. We appreciate your time, and hopefully we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Drew.